do have some friends like that are not biracial, it's of another race, and like I don't think we discuss race a lot either with one another. Like if we do, it's not like anything derogatory. It's just kind of like they want to understand more about like my race, to ask like some questions pertaining to that. It's more.
I do have friends of different cultures, albeit all white or all black. Race is something that we talk about, I wouldn't say all the time, but some of the times, because people wonder like, okay, how come you do this but you don't do that? Or like my white friends are always curious about my hair and how come I don't wash it every day like they do, or how come, I have these tendencies and those tendencies. But it's just something you have to adapt to and change to. I mean, one of the main things that like I always got teased about was I'm half white but I don't eat mayonnaise, and I'm half black and I don't eat hot sauce. Like, what's the deal? That was one joke that I always heard all the time. So.
Yeah, I guess probably the majority of my friends aren't biracial. And yeah, again, like with them, I'll intentionally bring up the subject just because it's a subject that I like to talk about, I guess. Sometimes, I guess, people have thought, like, I don't know, I just had a discussion recently with a friend of mine when we were talking about the organization I'm trying to start, and she was saying how she doesn't feel there is a separate race for, like, biracial people aren't a separate race. They're black and white, or Hispanic and white, whatever combination, I guess, of races they are.
The majority of my friends throughout my life have been predominantly white, and they've asked me before about my background and my race, but I think they kind of ignore it. And when I ask some of them what they see me as, they say just like us, so I really don't think they see me as like my Asian half. So
yes, I have had friends that were not biracial, and mostly starting in middle school and above, we started talking about race, especially when I moved, and that's when I moved to Georgia. My grandfather got sick, so my mom and I moved down there to live close to him before he passed away, and so I moved to a smaller southern town, and there weren't a lot of biracial people there, and I identified myself as multiracial, and I look white, so people question that. And so we always talked about race, and they're, how are you biracial? You don't look biracial. And so we'd talk about, how, you can come out looking one way, but that doesn't really change who your parents are and how your identity is. And I also got, I got the feeling of kind of being an alien outsider, like with them, because not maybe with my friends, but with some just random classmates, because a lot of them didn't believe me. They just were like, she's lying. She just thinks it's a cool thing to say she's biracial, so she's just making it up, because they just completely thought I was fabricating the story about having parents of two different races.
Growing up, they were biracial. Other kids who I hung out with were biracial. Really didn't talk about race until much later on. Probably going into college and then, identifying with other people, and you're like, whatever they're mixed with, putting that on the table and being able to relate. So I wouldn't say, while I was younger, not so much, but once I got to college, it was something we talked about more.
I did in high school. I had a good friend who was mixed too, and we both would complain about stuff like being caught in the middle. And then also I had one of my ex-boyfriends was biracial. We talked about that a lot, just how different people perceive you, and it helped me a lot to have somebody to talk about that with.
When I was younger, I had friends that were biracial, but I think because we were so young, we didn't really think about it, so we never discussed it. And then when I was in junior high and high school, I didn't really have friends that were biracial. Most of them were white because of the area that I lived in, so I never had the opportunity to talk with anyone else about it. And now that I'm in college, I have had friends that I've met that have had different backgrounds, and I guess we really haven't discussed it too much, just same life experiences, I guess, of growing up biracial.
Growing up, there was a close family that we hung out with. They're basically like my play brothers. They were both also from a biracial family, mom white, dad black, and we celebrated all the holidays together, celebrated birthdays together. We never really, like me, myself, and the other kids, we never discussed race or being biracial. It was just kind of a normal thing between us. But I know my mom would discuss with me how their mom's parents never wanted to see them because they were biracial, and that they had that prejudice against them. But their dad's side of the family saw them all the time.
When I was in high school, and probably when I was starting in, mostly high school is when I met most of my friends that are biracial. And in high school, I was friends with a group of girls who, we all really considered ourselves, we all actually were biracial, but for the most part, we considered ourselves black. Everybody else considered us black. When people asked us what race we were, we would always say we were biracial, but the friends that we hung out with and the other people that we hung out with and stuff were always black in high school. And I think it was just accepted that, we were black, taken for granted that we were black. But I wouldn't say, I haven't really had too many conversations, but I have had a couple conversations with, I'll say 2 of my friends in particular. And one is actually a girl, she's, it's amazing how she came out so light, but she's very, very light, green eyes, light brown hair, and looks totally white. But her dad is like the darkest guy I've ever seen in my life. But she and I have had conversations in the past about being biracial and how sometimes we feel as though we don't necessarily fit in. Because I've always identified a little bit more with black culture, and also a little bit more accepted because I don't speak Spanish, and I don't, I've never really associated with many other Latino people. So I always identified more. I've always been surrounded by black people my whole life. And so we were just talking about how sometimes, even though we do hang out with mostly black people, sometimes still feel, people do make little comments and stuff a lot, and say things, just little comments that aren't really that big of a deal, but after a while, things build up when people keep making comments about, every little thing that you do wrong is automatically because you're mixed, or you don't know how to act, or you don't know, I don't know. So that was something that I discussed with one of my friends, pretty much.
This is kind of negative, I guess. When I came to the U of M, because of my last name being Asian, they assumed that I couldn't speak English. So I was automatically put into the MLK program. And I remember my freshman year, I had to go to a meeting about, something with MLK and students, and I was the only one in the room that could speak English. And as soon as that meeting was done, I walked in the office and I changed advisors, and yeah.
I had a lot of awkward situations growing up. One of the things was when I played basketball growing up, and whenever I played against either an all-black team or a team that had at least a couple black girls, I always felt like I had to be tougher and play my best that game and show them, okay, that I'm not just a little black girl on the team. But when I would go to basketball camps or soccer camps, I would be the only black girl, and I felt like a raisin in a popcorn bag. That's, the analogy I always used. And I mean, it was difficult to deal with because it's hard not seeing anybody else around you, especially for me playing soccer. Everyone's like, okay, you play that because you're white, because black girls don't play soccer. And it really is very awkward that you don't. But I know one time, a lot of names I got called Oreo. I called the Inside Out Oreo, you know, especially in elementary school because I, you know, talked proper at times. And I was, until probably about 5th grade, I was the only white girl in the school. So when black kids came in from the hood areas, I wasn't used to seeing them. They weren't used to seeing a girl like me. It was just a different adaptation at first. But I mean, it's something you gotta get used to.
Probably, I guess, a misconception that people have had that, like, I automatically have the ability to fit in, I guess, with either race, like black or white. Like, it's automatic acceptance, I guess, because I have both sides, I guess. But that, I don't know, that's not necessarily always the case. So yeah, in terms of stereotyping, that's been a big thing. Like, I don't have like issues that certain students face because, like, I might not have face the same problems as black students because of my white side or whatever. I may not have the same issues that white students have because I'm black too.
Okay, the first time I was ever called any names is when I lived in the South, and it's very stereotypical, but that's when it happened. When people finally did start accepting that I was multiracial, I was called Oreo, and I was called Zebra. And when they found out that my dad was from Egypt, I was referred to as a sand nigger, which was very offensive. And it was just kind of mind-boggling to me because it was just like, why are you like calling me names because of who my parents are? It didn't make any sense. I came from just growing up in the North and being raised in a multiracial family and being raised in a very liberal background. I wasn't familiar with that kind of language and like that kind of I guess attack on your identity. And so it was really hard for me to kind of not just jump down people's throats when they said stuff like that, but now I chalk it up to ignorance and lack of education. But yeah, I was called things like that. And I guess with stereotypes, I am often referred to as black because my cultural identity, I would say, is African American. I grew up in African American neighborhoods. My father, not the biological one, but the one I grew up with, is African American, and most of my good friends are African American, and just the kind of culture I grew up in is that of an African American background. So even like my biracial friends will be like, "Oh, you're black," and people like we'll be talking, I'll be like, "Yeah, they don't like me because I said this or that," and they're like, "It's because you're black," and so like. It's just in joking and in passing, but they attribute certain stereotypes to me because of where I grew up or how I grew up, and it's not because of how I look, but it's still about race. So.
Also, another negative experience that I've had in my life has been when I was in high school and I lived in a small town in Wisconsin where there's predominantly white people, and the only other race there is Hmong people. And prior to moving there, I had no idea what a Hmong person was, and people in my hometown kind of think that everyone that looks Asian is Asian, and they don't set it apart from the different races that they really are. So they would call me in a joking way, "Oh, you're Hmong or something," you know, and I'm like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And I don't know, it's just really negative, and it made me feel really self-conscious, I guess, and wanting to separate myself more from those people. So I guess in a way I didn't become friends with the Hmong kids because I didn't want to self-identify like that or have other people self-identify me like that. So I feel bad about that now looking back at it, because I shouldn't have let other people influence how I made friends or how I felt about other people.
I really haven't heard the term like used for like to describe me, like mulatto. I heard my stepmom use the term to describe herself. Like, so I don't know if she thought of it as a derogatory term. And that's why I never really thought of it as a derogatory term either. But I think that now that I know like the context of it is kind of derogatory. And like I don't know, like I mean, if a person's comfortable with me that being used to describe them, I guess it'd be alright. But like I haven't really been like described as that myself.
Growing up, I thought mulatto just meant a mixed person. I didn't realize that it was a derogatory term. I thought it just meant mixed people. You know, no big deal. I didn't know it was like probably as bad as calling a black person an N-word. So I just learned that a couple minutes ago. But I guess mulatto is actually a very negative word that should not be used.
Actually, I heard of mulatto like in textbooks before, and like sort of outdated stuff. The first time I actually heard someone say it was actually one of my friends who was white, and she said mulatto. And honestly, I didn't really know what to think about it. To me, it just seemed like one of those outdated terms, but I didn't get offended by her using it. I just told her that usually people say mixed or biracial.
Mulatto pisses me off. It has been said to me in the South, mostly, or from people coming from small towns, even in the North. I've always been told by my mom that it's a derogatory term. She's always went off on people that have referred to her kids as mulatto. And so I know the history behind the word as well, and I read a lot of books about I read a lot of racial dramas and a lot of memoirs and things that just kind of bring up different I guess viewpoints and things that have been dealt with surrounding language and terms to do with race. And so the term mulatto really makes me angry, and it has been used. People are like, so you're mulatto, or she's mulatto, and I'm like, what did you say to me? Like, what did you say about me? What did you call me? Like, and I think the people that use it they think it's politically correct, like you said, and it's so wrong. Like, I don't understand how they think that's politically correct, because that's ridiculous. But yeah, it makes me very angry. It's not a term that I'm fond of